Why are you dressed like that? My mother needs her bath in 20 minutes.
You have exactly 5 minutes to find your mother somewhere else to sleep tonight.
5 minutes for... What are you talking about?
My husband just asked why I'm dressed for an interview when his mother needs a bath. I didn't answer. He doesn't know what today already is, or that I used his secret savings to pay for the professional movers currently standing on our porch. He promised me a salary. I took the house instead. And the best part? He has exactly 5 minutes to find a new place for his mother to sleep. My name is Danielle Reyes, and 2 years ago, I had a life nobody needed to rescue me from. I was a senior contract analyst at a logistics firm downtown, pulling in $94,000 a year with a corner cubicle I'd fought 3 years to earn. I had my own health insurance, my own name on the lease of a 3-bedroom I loved so much I painted the accent wall myself. Elijah and I had been married 11 months when his father died and left Patricia, his mother, alone in a house 2 hours outside the city, in the early stages of what her doctor gently called cognitive decline and what would later become full-blown dependency. I remember exactly where I was sitting when he brought it up. Our couch. A Tuesday. He held my hand like he was about to propose again. Just for a year, he said. Maybe less. Camille and Jordan will help too. And I'll match whatever you're making now. You won't lose a dime, Danny. I promise. I quit on a Thursday. I remember because my manager cried a little, and I felt like the luckiest woman alive. A husband willing to build our whole life around taking care of family. I thought that made him good. I didn't know yet that I promise was the most expensive sentence he'd ever say to me. The agreement was never written down. I want to be honest about that, because it matters later. It was verbal, a husband's word. Elijah would pay me the equivalent of my old salary, deposited the first of every month, for taking over full-time care of his mother. In exchange, his siblings would rotate weekend visits, so I'd get actual breaks. Sundays would be mine. For the first 30 days, it almost worked. Patricia was combative, grieving, difficult, but manageable. I told myself this was temporary. I told myself it was love. Then the first of the second month came and went. I found Elijah in the garage, wiping down his golf clubs like it was any other evening. Hey, I didn't see the transfer yet, I said, keeping my voice light. The way you do when you're still hoping it's an oversight and not a pattern. He didn't even look up. Work had a rough month. Bonus got pushed. I'll catch you up next time, I swear. I believed him. That's the part that still makes me flinch. Not that he lied, but how easily I let him. Camille and Jordan didn't come that first weekend either, or the one after. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor at midnight, Patricia finally asleep, checking my old co-workers' LinkedIn updates on my phone like I was reading about a life I used to be allowed to have. I didn't know it yet, but that missed payment wasn't a rough month. It was the first thread of something I'd spend the next 2 years pulling apart, one quiet discovery at a time, starting with a receipt I wasn't supposed to find. Nobody tells you what caregiving actually costs until you're standing in a kitchen at 2 a.m., scrubbing a pot Patricia insisted she hadn't used, listening for the sound of her wandering down the hallway again. The days blurred into a routine with no edges. Up at 5:30 to get her medication sorted before she woke up confused and combative. Breakfast, bathing, the fights about the bathing. Afternoons trying to keep her calm through the hours she called the bad hours, when she'd ask for her husband like he might walk through the door. Nights where I'd finally sit down around 11 and realize I hadn't eaten since lunch. I stopped seeing friends. Not dramatically, just slowly. A maybe next month that turned into 8 months. My old coworker Renee texted every few weeks. I stopped answering around the 6-month mark, not because I didn't love her, but because I didn't have anything to say that wasn't Patricia. The worst part wasn't the exhaustion. It was Camille's Instagram. Every few weeks, another post. Camille and Jordan in Turks and Caicos, Camille and Jordan at a rooftop brunch, captions about family and gratitude. The same siblings who'd promised to rotate weekends. I'd be elbow deep in dishwater at midnight, scrolling their vacation photos on a cracked phone screen, and feel something in me go very quiet. I never said anything to them. I told myself that wasn't my place. By month 5, I'd stopped asking Elijah about the money every week. I'd started asking once a month, calmly, like I was requesting something unreasonable. We agreed on a salary, I said one night, after Patricia had finally gone down. I haven't seen a full payment in 3 months, Elijah. He didn't even put his phone down. You're really doing this right now? My mother is sick, Danny. She could die, and you're worried about a paycheck. It's not a paycheck. It's what we agreed to. I gave up my job for this. You gave up your job because you love this family. Or at least I thought you did. He looked up then, and his voice dropped into something almost pitying. I didn't realize you were this. I don't even know the word. Greedy? Is that it? My mother needs help, and you're keeping score. I went to bed that night feeling like the villain in a story I hadn't agreed to be in. 2 weeks later, I was doing laundry, his laundry, her laundry, everyone's laundry, when a folded slip of paper fell out of Elijah's jacket pocket. A receipt, $2,850. A watch, purchased 11 days after he'd told me, word for word, that work had cut everyone's commission and he physically could not pay me that month. I sat down on the edge of the bed and read it 3 times. I didn't cry. That surprised me more than the receipt itself. Something in my chest that had been soft for 2 years went very still, very cold, very precise, like a door quietly closing and locking from the inside. I folded the receipt back up exactly the way I'd found it, slid it back into his pocket, and said nothing. That night was the last night I asked Elijah for anything. If you've ever felt that exact moment, where hurt turns into something colder and more useful, tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one who's felt a door close like that. I stopped arguing with Elijah after the receipt. Arguing had gotten me nowhere in 5 months. It wasn't going to start working now. Instead, I got quiet. Quiet enough that he mistook it for surrender. You've been a lot calmer lately, he said one evening. Almost suspicious, like peace was something I wasn't allowed to have without his permission. I'm just tired, I told him. It wasn't a lie. I was tired. I was also paying attention in a way I hadn't let myself before. It started small, noticing which bills he opened alone and which he left on the counter. Noticing he'd started taking his laptop into the bathroom when he answered work emails. Noticing the new lock on the drawer in his home office, the one that used to just hold old tax documents and a stapler. One Sunday, Patricia napping, Elijah out getting groceries for 2 hours longer than any grocery run should take, I found the laptop. Unlocked. He'd never once thought I'd go looking. I almost didn't open the banking tab. Some small, loyal part of me still didn't want to know. I opened it anyway. The account wasn't one I recognized, a second checking account, opened the same month I quit my job. And it wasn't just Elijah's paycheck sitting in it. There were recurring deposits, $1,400 from Camille, $1,100 from Jordan, landing on the first of every month like clockwork, memo lines that read, plainly, unmistakably Mom's care. They had been paying. This whole time, they had been paying a combined $2,500 a month, meant to go toward hiring proper in-home care for their mother. I realized with a slow, sick certainty to become my salary. Elijah had simply never passed $1 of it to me. He'd been collecting checks from his own siblings meant for his mother's care I was already providing, every single day, for free. I sat in that office for a long time, doing math I didn't want to do. 2 years. Roughly $2,500 a month, minus the handful of partial payments he'd tossed me like scraps. It came to a number I'm not ready to say out loud yet. I started a folder that week. Black, plain, the kind you'd buy for a middle school project. I printed every bank statement, every screenshot, every text where he'd called me greedy for asking to be paid for the work he was already being paid for. You'll see exactly what went into that folder, all of it, by the end of this story. For now, I just closed the laptop, put it back exactly where I found it, and went to check on Patricia like nothing in my entire life had just changed. Elijah thought I'd gone quiet because I was broken. He liked that version of me, smaller, tired, grateful for whatever he handed down. He had no idea that broken was just the costume I was wearing while I rebuilt everything underneath it. The interviews happened at night, after Patricia was asleep, in the car in the driveway with my laptop balanced on the steering wheel and the dome light off so it wouldn't wake anyone. 2 years out of the workforce should have hurt me more than it did. It turned out contracts experience doesn't expire, and neither does the fury that gets you through a first-round interview at 11 p.m. sounding calm. By week 3, I had a second-round callback from a firm downtown, close enough that I could see my old office building from the parking garage. The lawyer came next. Her name was on a card Renee had slipped me months earlier, back when I still thought I'd never need it. I met her on a Tuesday. I'd told Elijah was a doctor's appointment for Patricia. "Walk me through everything," she said. "Start with the verbal agreement." I opened the black folder. She didn't say much while she read. When she finally looked up, she said, "You have more here than most people bring me after a divorce that's already filed. This isn't just a bad marriage, Danielle. This is a paper trail." The house complicated things, or so I thought, until the lawyer asked me one question that changed everything. Whose name is actually on the deed? I hadn't thought about it in years. The house had been my great-aunt Louise's. She'd left it to me outright when she passed, 3 years before I even met Elijah. We'd moved in together after the wedding, and somewhere in the fog of caregiving and exhaustion, I'd let myself half believe it belonged to us the way everything else did. It didn't. It was mine. Fully, legally, on paper. Which made sense of something that had been quietly needling me for weeks. Elijah, gentle and persuasive in a way that used to work on me, saying things like, "We should really add both our names properly. Make it official, for Mom's sake, in case anything happens to either of us." He brought it up 3 times in a month. Each time, a little more urgent. He wasn't trying to protect the family. He was trying to get my great-aunt's house signed halfway into his name before I figured out what he'd been doing with his siblings' money. I didn't sign anything. Instead, I did something quieter. With my lawyer's help, I began the paperwork on my end, not to take the house from him, since it was never his to begin with, but to formally, legally end his right to stay in it. A notice, drawn up in silence, dated for the exact week the movers I'd already started arranging would arrive. He kept asking me to sign. I kept smiling and saying I'd think about it. I already knew exactly what I was going to do. He just didn't know the clock had already started. The morning the movers came, I woke up before my alarm, the way you do when a day has been circled on a calendar in your head for weeks. I laid out the blazer I hadn't worn in 2 years. I made Patricia's breakfast one last time, out of habit more than obligation. Elijah found me in the kitchen, dressed, composed, checking my phone. "Why are you dressed like that?" "My mother needs her bath in 20 minutes. I didn't answer. He doesn't know what today already is, or that I used his secret savings to pay for the professional movers currently standing on our porch. He promised me a salary. I took the house instead. And the best part? He has exactly 5 minutes to find a new place for his mother to sleep. This time, you know exactly what that sentence means. I set the black folder on the kitchen island between us. "What is this?" he asked, already irritated. Already reaching for his phone like this was an inconvenience standing between him and his morning. "Open it." He did. I watched his face change page by page. The bank statements showing Camille and Jordan's monthly deposits. Mom's care written plainly in the memo line, month after month, next to a running total of what he'd actually paid me across 2 years. Then the unpaid salary invoice my lawyer had drawn up, itemized to the dollar. Then, last, the notice to vacate, dated for today, with the deed to the house, my great-aunt Louise's house, attached behind it. "This is my home too," he said, but his voice had already lost its footing. "No," I said. "It was mine before you ever asked me to quit my job for you. You just forgot, because it was easier to let me forget too." He looked up at me, and for the first time in 2 years, I watched Elijah Reyes try to find a version of himself in that folder he could still defend. There wasn't one. "Camille and Jordan have been paying you $2,500 a month for 2 years to care for your mother," I said. "I did the work. You kept the money. And when I asked for what you promised me, you called me greedy. He didn't have an answer. For once, neither did his mother, standing in the doorway in her robe, quiet, watching her son hold a folder full of everything he couldn't undo. The movers only touched what belonged to me. Furniture from before the marriage. Boxes I'd quietly packed over 3 weeks of nights he thought I was too tired to be anything but asleep. Everything else, I left exactly where it stood. I didn't raise my voice on the way out. I didn't need to. 2 years of silence had taught me that calm is so much colder than screaming ever could be. Elijah stood on the lawn as the truck pulled away, his mother beside him in her robe, both of them smaller against the house than I remembered them being that first year, when I still believed his promises were the kind a person kept. I started my new job the following Monday. Same salary I walked away from 2 years ago, plus 2 years of interest I intend to spend on myself. Would you have stayed another month, hoping he'd change? I almost did, until I saw the receipt.